Hi there, welcome to Managing Self in a Changing World. My name is David McComb of Full Circle Management Solutions, a Belfast-based business consultancy. Podcast will last for approximately 45 minutes, and there's a slide pack which accompanies this session, and it'll contain links to further material that you might be able to use to help to advance your learning in this area, and also an opportunity to record a number of actions on that slide pack as we go through today's session. Just want to open up the slides and to share those on screen. So an overview of our podcast. We want to just cover some general areas at the outset, and then we want to look at the idea of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and very much typified by where we now find ourselves, and also then to look at well-being and some things we might consider in that area. Also very focused on this session around three key areas on being proactive and how we might be and be more proactive going forward. To think about our own personal focus and how we might become more focused, and also about organisation and how we might be more organised, particularly in the area of prioritisation and on managing our time. And really wanting to, as we move through the session, to bring those things close together to create a 100-day plan that might bring all of the elements of our discussion into one place that really gives you something to work on over the next quarter, over the next 100 days, over the next 3 months, as you think both in terms of your own proactivity, level of focus and organisation in general, and a tool that you can use going forward, but also to think about in this particular period of time, with the challenges that we all face around COVID-19 and how we're managing in that space, and how we've all had our schedules disrupted, we've all had our routine and our rhythm significantly impacted over the last period of time, and how we might deal with that, the peculiarities of what that situation places before us. In terms of this particular podcast, then the aims are, first of all, to equip you better to manage yourself for your own benefit and also for the benefit of those that you might lead. So we're very conscious that you have a responsibility to yourself. But we're also very conscious that you have a responsibility to other people. So again, we're very firm in our sense that if you want to lead others well, if you want to manage others well, that maybe you need to think about how you lead and manage yourself first and foremost. And then we want to think through the second part of the session about how you remain proactive, focused, and organised, and helping you to prioritise, which is obviously very important. How to think about being effective and also being efficient, and to be able to concentrate on things where you can really add influence over the course of all of these. First of all, we just want to think about that idea that we introduced slightly earlier, living in a VUCA world, where VUCA really characterises the current environment that we're in, and maybe the personal and business leadership that's required to navigate it successfully. And it's a term that's been around for possibly 25, 30 years, but again, it is really important when we consider where we currently are, and in what we've encountered in all of our organisations. If this is early April, a state of affairs that we've been contending with for the last probably week and a half to 2 weeks, maybe slightly longer, both personally and in terms of where we are in our businesses. We think about volatility, and the state of flux that we're now in, how dynamically things change, how quickly things have changed. Certainly been the case over the last few weeks, but any of us who've been in business for a number of years will recognise that over successive years, the atmosphere has become more and more volatile, and we've seen changes in the political environment, we've seen changes in the economic environment, we've seen maybe more recently, we've been very focused around Brexit and things of that nature. So that's the environment that we've been in for a period of time, and that's certainly where we've been over the last few weeks. Secondly, we think about uncertainty, how things move very quickly, but also how difficult it is to plan ahead. And so often we put so much onus on planning, and planning still remains very, very important, but also that we need to think about the level of uncertainty, the level of risk, the level of unknowns that there are whenever we're looking forward. We'll be aware in the third of these around the complexity of the business environment. And again, any of us who are trading in through different currencies, who are manufacturing products that we then have to bring in either through our supply chain, products from a different jurisdiction, or are selling into a number of different jurisdictions. The complexity of the environment that we now have to work in, as well as contending with compliance, regulatory, legal, technical requirements as well. It has become a much more complex environment. And finally, on the set of four is that sense of ambiguity. So again, that uncertainty, certainly we've already touched on, but also the ambiguous nature of where we are going forward and what that calls us to be, both in ourselves and in our businesses, to be able to contend with that, to be more agile, to be able to maybe worry sometimes less about planning in detail for the future, but being able to react much more quickly, to be much more agile, and to make good decisions based on less information, based on information that's maybe less complete. On the slide pack itself, we have a clip that you might want to look at. It's just a 2 or 3 minute clip on YouTube, which might give you just something more to work on whenever you're considering volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, and not just as an academic exercise, but to really think about what does this mean for me today, but also maybe more importantly, what does it mean going forward in terms of how I organize myself, how I arm myself, how I equip myself for this changing order, but also how do I equip my business for this change in the way things are. And also, I think it would be remiss not to mention the 5 steps to mental well-being. Certainly in a Northern Ireland context, we've seen a lot of work being done through the health trusts in this area. And again, these are the 5 steps that are quite often used in promoting the idea of better well-being. And I think it is worth, just in the times that we're in, they've become particularly important, and also that we think how these relate to us and how they might relate to our business connections, and also maybe our own personal connections. Firstly, if we look at connect, we need to think about how we talk and listen, how we're there, how we feel connected. And certainly, we're not physically connected. We're not allowed to be as physically connected or as socially connected as we might have been through the traditional methods, through maybe face-to-face meetings, through being in the same workspace as our colleagues. So we need to look at different ways of doing that. And again, we have such fantastic technology with FaceTime, with WhatsApp video, with the medium that we're using to record this session through Zoom, Skype, and there's so many others that are available. But taking that opportunity to talk and listen, to be there and to feel connected, but not just to listen, but also maybe be able to see. Sometimes we can take in so much more information when we can see the other person as well as whenever we can hear them. To think about the importance of being active, and certainly this session isn't about diet and exercise, but we do recognize how important it is to release the endorphins, and how important it is to be active, to eat well, to exercise well, and to look after ourselves in terms of our own well-being, particularly at a time like this when our own rhythms and our own patterns and our own routines and schedules have been so significantly disrupted. Thirdly, we ask you to take notice, again, to take notice of those things that you enjoy and to carve out times for those. It's so easy whenever we're maybe working from home and we're on our computer much of the time, or our phone is by our side, to maybe neglect those things that we enjoy. And that might be some time with the family, it might be walking the dog, it might be reading, it might be taking time out to watch a movie. But remember those things that give you joy, and to still carve out the time for those. Those obvious steps of walking in through the work door in the morning and walking out through the work door in the evening maybe aren't as delineated as they might have been, and certainly to take that opportunity to see those things differently and to recognize that, but not to ignore things that we need to do to look after ourselves. To think about keeping learning, and again, we've learned so much about technology over the last few weeks, but also to think about new experiences, continuing to learn, continuing to go deeper, continuing to maybe address those things that we've been putting on the back burner. And if you have been fortunate enough maybe to have a little bit more time, a little bit more sense than you've had previously, then to take that opportunity to attend to that piece of learning or that development of that skill that you've been putting on the back burner for so long. And finally, of that set of five, the idea of giving, being more giving with your time and with your words and your presence. And that's to look out for yourself and to make sure you've connections with other people, but also to look out for those people who are in your immediate eye line who maybe could drop off. That maybe that colleague who's quieter than others, to make sure that you're still checking in, making a phone call, maybe making a FaceTime call, just to make sure that they're okay, and making sure that you're just encouraging people with your words and with your presence. So that's important for you to give out to other people, but also to receive from others. And I think the previous slide around the VUCA environment and also these steps to well-being are important as a background, maybe as a backdrop or as a context to much of what we'll discuss over the next 30 to 35 minutes. So I guess the burning question is, who is in the effectiveness business? And I think we all are. We all recognize that we need to be much more effective in what we do. But what does effectiveness mean, and why is it important? And where does it sit with maybe its bedfellow efficiency? Where do the two of those sit together? And often we use those two words interchangeably, but are they truly interchangeable, or do they mean different things? And I think this is an important starting point over what we'll talk about. We talk about being more proactive and being more focused and being better organized, is that we recognize effectiveness comes first and efficiency comes second. And effectiveness is very much about doing the right thing. So are we doing the right thing? Are we doing the thing that is the highest priority? Are we doing the thing that matters most? Or are we being very busy doing things that maybe don't matter a great deal? And we'd always say that in the first incarnation, we need to think about effectiveness. Am I doing the right thing? And then, having recognized we're doing the right thing, are we doing it in the most efficient way possible? But effectiveness comes first and efficiency comes second. Effectiveness is about doing the right thing. Efficiency is about doing things in the right way. So in many ways, effectiveness is about leadership and efficiency is about management. Both are important and both are inseparable, but there's a sequence, there's an order. And again, we can think about that on a larger stage in terms of our business or our organization. But we should also be thinking about that personally. Have we come to the end of another week and are all those things that we wanted to get done still not getting done? And why is that the case? And are we creating the illusion of efficiency by being very, very busy, but maybe we're not focusing on the right things? And certainly what we cover over the next few minutes will hopefully help to address that in terms of prioritization, in terms of being proactive, in terms of focusing on the things that really matter. Both are important, but the sequence also matters. So what gets to happen when we're personally effective? So it sounds great. Why would I not want to be? Why would any of us not want to be more personally effective? What gets to happen when we're more personally effective? Well, certainly there are a number of things happen. Hopefully we get to have a greater sense of achievement. But whenever we do get to the end of the day and whenever we check what our objectives were for the day or priorities, there's a sense of achievement and that we've actually got there. The same at the end of a week, maybe the same at the end of a month. So that sense of achievement matters. The sense of productivity, the sense of actually getting things done, not just getting any old thing done, but getting done the things that mattered, the things that we set out to do at the start of a week. Certainly we should feel again more energized and more enthused because we've got done those things that we set out to do. So lots of things get to happen if we're personally effective. And maybe it's a reflection that you want to take out of this session, is to think, what would happen if I was more personally effective? What would get to happen, not just to me, but maybe the people who are closest to me from a work context or from a personal context? How would I get to feel? How would the world look to me? What conversations would I hear myself having if I was more personally effective? Pete Drucker is one of the sort of the legends of the management game, and one of his great quotes is, "There's nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency." something that should not be done at all. And I think that's always something to bear in mind, not just as part of planning our week ahead or our day ahead, but also in reflecting on the day just past or in the week just past. How efficient was I really, in terms of did I work really hard and achieve the things that needed to be achieved, or did I work really hard and really not get to those things that mattered, whether because of how I managed myself or maybe how I allowed others to crowd in on the day that I had planned. What we should also mention, just in passing, that doesn't mean it's not important, but again, I think it's that sense of intentionality really matters. Things don't happen by accident, and again, we're responsible for so much of what happens both in our own lives, but also in the interactions that we have with our colleagues. Certainly productivity matters, and mindfulness, this is not a session on mindfulness, but we know that mindfulness and being in the moment, and really getting the energy from that matters as well. But where those two circles overlap around productivity and mindfulness, that sense of intentionality, that's that sense of we set out to be effective. It's important that we have, that we plan to do that, it's in our psyche, that we've created the lists, that we've managed around that, and that we're intentionally setting out to be what we want to be in terms of maybe being more proactive, prioritizing better, being better organized. It will not happen by accident. And some people are very fortunate that their natural disposition is that they organically move towards being highly effective. But I think for many of us, if we're being honest, if we're better structured and we're better organized, we're better disciplined, and we're intentional about how we organize our day and our week and our month, then we've a much better chance of being what we want to be, which is, and really the purpose of the podcast is that we manage ourselves better. And we're also very aware of the context we work into in terms of that changing world. So in managing yourself and being effective, we're going to focus primarily on those three areas we already highlighted in our agenda. First of all, we're going to be proactive. We're going to take responsibility. And even just as we break that word responsibility down, we think about being more responsible, i.e. being better able to respond. And that's right at the heart of this sense of being proactive. Secondly, that we'll be more focused, that we'll understand the outcome, and we'll work harder at that in a moment when we think about this idea of beginning with the end in mind. Where do we want to get to so that we make sure that we're doing the things that really matter on the journey there? And thirdly, being better organized and prioritizing better primarily, but also thinking about how we manage our time. When we think about urgent versus important, we start to think about where we put our time so that we get the best return for the effort that we put in. And all the while in all of this, we're thinking about our own energy levels and thinking about where we do our best work and how we remain energized, both in terms of how we turn up in the morning, how we manage during the day, and also how we feel a sense of achievement and momentum and energy that is not just the result of adrenaline, but also the result of good practice throughout the day. Then we can reflect at the end of the day, or at the end of the week, or the end of the month, and then we can come back at the start of the next time period feeling equally energized, or maybe more so, for whatever that next period of time has in store. So first of all, if we think about being proactive is really about taking responsibility. And again, a lifetime is hopefully a longer period of time, but even just breaking that down into smaller chunks, it's about taking responsibility, that sense of being responsible for that period of time that we're thinking about. So if we just think about what characterizes proactive people, they recognize, first of all, that they are responsible. They are able to respond. It is their choice based on events that have happened. They can influence the outcome because they get to decide how they respond. Proactive people don't blame genetics or circumstances or conditions or conditioning for their behavior. They recognize that at that point in time, and at all points in time, They are responsible for their own behaviour. So again, we so often use this language about how we are and how others are around us and how much attitudes and behaviours matter. And we recognise that in ourselves, we get to decide how we turn up and the behaviour that we decide to exhibit. Proactive people are consistently executing great levels of resourcefulness and initiative. There's a great phrase that I've heard often used, that we are infinitely resourceful. We get to decide how resourceful we are, and never truer at this point in time. And again, in terms of how we respond, how we decide we'll respond to the situations around us. How resourceful can we be? And we've seen some businesses and some individuals that have been incredibly resourceful around how they use their time and how they focus on where the need is at this precise moment in time, and whether that's in terms of adaptability of their business to produce something completely different in terms of a product or service than they would have done previously, to find new opportunities, to find new lines of business, to find new geographies, to introduce something really creative to really meet a demand that's out there, and also to be initiative, to show initiative, to recognize that the right side of our brain is really important, as well as the logical and the process left side, and to recognize that we have initiative, that we can show initiative, and that we can be highly creative. And also, proactive people know that they can get to choose their own behavior, that they get to decide how they respond in different situations, and maybe without being overly negative, but also it's important to think about people who maybe are more reactive in their mindset. What might typify them? Very often, reactive people are more affected by their physical environment. They find other reasons, and whether that's government or whether that's the economy or whether that's a set of circumstances, and they blame sometimes those external sources for their behaviour. Whereas proactive people don't, they take account of what's going on around them and they respond appropriately. And again, getting right down to brass tacks, if the weather's good, reactive people tend to feel good. If the weather's bad, they might use that as an excuse or a reason for poor attitude or for less than optimal performance. And again, the weather is only one example. Reactive people can very often find a whole range of reasons why they're not as proactive as they might be. And again, maybe other language you might use when we've been proactive on one side and we've reactive on the other is to think about fire prevention as opposed to firefighting, having a risk focus as opposed to having an issue focus. So proactivity, massively important, and we want to think just about developing those ideas into another couple of concepts that might help us to really get our head around not just proactivity as a concept, but also about how we might actually be more proactive on a day-to-day basis. First of all, we have those interrelated ideas of how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And again, we all act in certain ways, but quite often one step upstream from how we act is how we feel, then pushing on how we act. And then if we take another step upstream, we think about how we think. And very often these three work very closely together. But where we need to get to is, in terms of root cause, is about being responsible or being proactive about how we think in the first instance, because that in turn presses on how we feel, and in turn presses and how we act. And again, there's lots of great neuroscience around these. There's lots more that we could talk about. But again, in terms of just what we're doing today, it's useful to think about how we think and how we have control over that. And then that can determine how we feel. And very often that manifests itself in how we act. Also, what's important in this space is this equation for those of you who maybe are more logic or process based, or maybe from an engineering or an operations background. We like a good equation. So E plus R equals O is saying that events plus your response is equal to the outcome. And what we're really saying is events will happen as events happen, and very often outside of our control, and very often in things that we have little influence over. But again, we can get to influence the outcome in terms of how we respond to any given situation. And again, we've seen this on so many occasions, maybe in our own lives, with people that we interact with colleagues in our own businesses or organizations, and maybe in ourselves in terms of how we react, in terms of us deciding how we respond. And again, that idea of being response able, based on the current set of circumstances, that we get to determine how we respond. And if we believe that, then we can get to influence the outcome. What I'd ask you to think about, and again, certainly at this precise moment in time, but also beyond this session, and maybe as we think of this session, it's a short burst of 45 minutes, but how do we react beyond this session? How do we proact beyond this session? How do we take action? And again, the real value will come on what you decide to do with the information, with the knowledge, with maybe the skills that you've acquired over the course of this session. And certainly as you use the pack afterwards, think about being more proactive. Think about maybe where you've been agitated or provoked, or you've been stimulated in some way in your thinking, that what actions you might need to take. And these are really ground level actions. These are physical actions that you think that you might need to take now. And who's responsible? And certainly you're responsible, but who else might you need to work with in order to be more proactive as an action out of the section that we've just covered. And if we move from proactive to being more focused, how do we become more focused? And again, thinking back to the purpose of the session that we're covering around managing yourself in this world that's rapidly changing. So being focused is very much about beginning with the end in mind. So this leans very heavily on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So again, if you've never read a management book, I'd really encourage you to read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. And again, not just because it's a book about business or organization, it's a book about life, and it's something that's really, really useful. And the 3 sessions that we're focusing on around being proactive, being focused, and in being organized are very much related to Covey's first 3 habits, where he talks about getting yourself in order first, about personal victory before we think about how we interact or are interdependent with others. So being focused is about beginning with the end in mind. It's having a vision, it's having a sense of where we're getting to, and that vision of what the end might look like, and whether that's at the end of today, or the end of the week, or that's a particular project, or that's a particular piece of work, or the solution to a problem. John Cotter, the change management guru, would say a great vision stops 1,000 stupid questions. So again, there's that sense of, if we have a very clear idea of where we're going, then it makes the journey towards that much more fluid, much more organized, much more sequential in terms of the steps to get there. But also all the while we've got our gaze fixed on the end and the vision where we want to get to. So again, if we're much more focused, we can develop this outcome-oriented mindset with every activity, and whether that's a project or a meeting or a particular presentation about various contributions that we might make, and very, very much in the spirit of what we're talking about in this particular session around daily and weekly planning. We think about being focused and managing our energy on the things that can be controlled as opposed to the things that cannot be controlled, and very much focusing maybe on where we want to be in terms of 100 days. And we talked at the very outset of the next quarter. As we're publishing this session, we're very much at the start of April. So where do we want to be at the end of this quarter, at the end of June, and maybe then in 200 days? And I think there's a sense of the time that we're in, and with the virus that we're trying to all work with at the moment, that sense of where would we be in the next 100 days, and then maybe in the period thereafter, as we think about where we might be whenever we start to move through the other side to whatever that new normal might be at that point. So where do we want to be in 100 days and 200 days? Where do we want our business to be? What do we want to be saying? What discussions do we want to be having? Who do we want to be doing business with? What jurisdictions, what products or services do we want to be offering in 100 or 200 days? So in the next quarter or in the next 2 quarters from where we are now. Again, I really like this statement: if your ladder's not leaning against the right wall, every step you take gets you to the wrong place faster. And it's very much about, when we're being focused, we're thinking about getting to the right place, but also taking responsibility and determining what that right place might be in terms of the things that we can influence, the things that we can control. And very much central to all of this is the sense of good planning, and why planning matters at all, and why bother planning. Because in the first instance, and I think that hopefully this visual really helps to get the message across, that planning is the mental first creation before the physical second creation. Very often when we're delivering on a project, or we're delivering on a week, or we're delivering on a month, there should be a very clear sense of, we've been there before, and we have been, because as we've planned it, we've been thinking it through, and with that sense, as we're actually delivering or implementing or executing, that we've already been there because we have in the planning process. So again, it's why planning is so important, but also planning with that sense of, what is the end in mind? What is the physical second creation? And that's the value of planning, is that we get to think through, we get to do a walkthrough of how our project or our day or our week might go, so that when we get there, we have a sense that we've already been there once. It's also worth, just as we pass through that idea, that the sense of a circle of concern and a circle of influence. I think if we get too caught up in things that concern us, but things that we can't influence, then we tend to spend time poorly. We tend to let other things impinge on our thinking, and we should much more focus on the circle of influence, those things that we can influence, and maybe look at initially not thinking too much about our circle of concern, and then also think about expanding our circle of influence. So what can we have more influence over in terms of partnerships, in terms of organizations we might be part of, in terms of other associations that we might make, in terms of networks of people that we might develop, or networks of businesses that we might develop, that allow us to expand that circle of influence. And absolutely key in terms of where we put our focus. Focus on those things we can influence, rather than those things that concern us, but over which we can exert very little influence. And again, as we think about, in the same way, about being more proactive, we now think about being more focused. What are the actions? What were you stimulated or agitated or provoked to think about over the last few minutes? And what actions might you want to take? And use the time following your watching of this podcast to think about how you might become more focused, or maybe let it run through the filters over a few hours or over a few days, and as other things occur to you, keep the file open, keep the proactive actions, keep the focus actions, keep those open, and add to those as we start to build a set of those that we might need to take some action around. And thirdly, we think about being better organized. So again, I think that's something that we might aspire to, and maybe this is the opportunity, with possibly more time or more space, or probably with better tools at our disposal, that we can become better organized. Right at the backbone of being better organized is this sense of putting first things first, or doing first things first. And very central to that concept, again, is the idea of better prioritizing. So we eliminate energy and time wasting tendencies by focusing and executing or implementing on your and your team's important goals within this rhythm. And we're going to talk a bit more about the rhythm of weekly planning, of better weekly planning, to execute on the most important priorities. So recognizing that in any day or any week, there'll be things that we'd like to have got done that we didn't get done, but those things that we did get done were the things that really mattered, the things that were a priority. And maybe as part of that, the idea of living a more balanced existence, that recognizing that not doing everything is okay, giving ourselves permission to not get everything done, but with the proper planning and the proper organization and the proper prioritization, the things that we do get done are the things that matter most. And maybe not just things in a business context, but things also in a personal context, that we get done those things that were most important. And what we're really saying, just to underpin all of that, is to realize that it's all right to say no sometimes, so that we can focus on those highest priorities. And sometimes that's saying no to ourselves, and sometimes that's saying no to other people or to other pressures. Very much at the center of Covey's thinking in this area is this idea of urgent versus important and where we should spend the majority of our time. And in terms of our thinking in this quadrant, where we would love to spend and where we should aspire to spend more of our time is in the top right hand quadrant. So we're spending our time on those things that are important but are not urgent, or maybe more accurately, in many cases, not urgent yet. Because I think we find, if we're being really honest, is that many of the things that are in the top left quadrant that are both urgent and important weren't always urgent. That at one time they were much less urgent, but somehow in the intervening time we have let things slip, or we haven't attended to things to create a draft, or to interact with other people first, or to run a short pilot, so that then we wait until something has become both urgent and important. So in terms of our own energy, in terms of our own the quality of what we produce, in terms of doing our best work, if we can spend more of our time in the not urgent and important, then the very strong sense is that we will be much more effective and we will be much more productive. And certainly in that quadrant one in the top left, there are things that are urgent and important. There'll always be things that are urgent and important. There'll be unscheduled work. There'll be last minute changes. There'll maybe be dealing with late inputs from other people. There may be sometimes with that sense of forcing decisions and enforcing closure. But if we can spend more of the time in the top right-hand quadrant, and that's not looking to spend 5% or 10% or 25%, but maybe looking to spend the majority of our time in that top right quadrant, or doing things that are thoughtful and creative, things that are better quality. Because the challenge is very often when we're doing work that's both urgent and important, even those things that we're naturally or ordinarily really good at, we get to be bad at those as well, which is really challenging for all of us. But if we're in the top right-hand quadrant, as well as being thoughtful and putting out high-quality work, we can also work at productive collaborations, working better interdependently with others, attending to training and development, and maybe getting to have some recreation and family time. In the bottom left-hand quadrant, those things that are not important but urgent are generally of lower value. They tend to be non-project emergencies, just miscellaneous administration that we find that we have to do, but do we really have to do it? And if it's not important, why would we spend high proportions of our time doing it? And if we move into the bottom right hand quadrant, that idea of not just work that is not important and not urgent, but maybe in looking at ourselves, do we overanalyze? Do we strive for perfection? Is there this paralysis by analysis? How many times do we recheck a presentation that's important? How many times do we recheck an email that's important? And sometimes we just need to let those things go, because they can also be viewed as not urgent and not important. And that's everything from gossip and idle speculation as well, and also maybe just pointless web surfing. There's pointless time spent maybe on social media as well. So we just think about what we might want to do in each of those quadrants. Certainly the things that are urgent and important, we very often need to continue to do those and get those done, but we want to get that sense of spending less of our time in that space. Things that are not urgent but really important, get those in the diary. So that's about building in time for planning, building in time to be creative, building in time to get into partnership or get into collaboration with others. Maybe there's an opportunity for things that are in the bottom left-hand quadrant to delegate those, or to give them to somebody else as part of their development, where the delegation becomes coaching. And certainly in the far right-hand quadrant, why would we do work that is not important and not urgent? So we need to dump that. We need to eliminate that completely from where we spend our time. So recognize it in order to do some new stuff. The only way we can do that is to spend more time that we probably don't have, but also maybe recognize that in trying to make time to do some new stuff, we may have to drop some old stuff. We may have to do less of some of the things that we're currently doing. And again, I love this visual, this sense that we've rocks, pebbles, and sand, and if the jar defines the time that we have available in any time period, a day or a week, if we fill the jar with sand, which are the small things, the less important and the less urgent things, then there's no time left to put in pebbles or rocks. But if we put in the rocks first, those really big things, those things that really matter in the week, and we build in the time to do those priority items, then the rocks get done, and we might also have space for some pebbles, and ultimately also space for some sand. So we're much more productive or much more effective in terms of how we use our time. And just as we move through that and we move towards the end of the session, we're thinking about prioritizing and planning inside that whole space of being much more organized with our time. And certainly there are some thoughts there that I'll want to point you towards. Set priorities and plan a week in advance. So again, if we're planning for the week, we should probably do that towards the end of the previous week, as we recognize what will and will not get done, and what other events, what other meetings, and what other priorities we have in our week, on our time in the week to come. Think about a permanent diary or notebook, and that might be electronic, it might be paper-based. My preference is for paper-based, but certainly to have something you make notes in, not in the form of post-its, not in the form of scraps of paper, but something that's permanent as either a diary or a notebook, and to check that at the end of every day, and also to check that at the end of every week. So to reflect on the day past and to organize and manage and control for the day ahead. One other point that's on that group of 6 points is also to batch tasks into groups. So we're much more productive if we make our phone calls at the same time, if we write our reports in the same space of time, if we do like tasks or like activities in groups, we're mentally fresher and we're much more productive if we can do it in that manner. And again, that sense, and hopefully it's in a strong sense through much of what we've talked about, the sense that planning works best when it also includes prioritization. There are a number of approaches in this regard, and again, we don't have time to touch on any of those in great detail, but in the slide pack, if you click on any of those links, we've given you 3 examples there maybe to think about a bit more. If pen and paper really suit you, then bullet journaling might be the tool you're looking for. It's a concept that's been doing the rounds for some time, but has really been consolidated into a book by writer Carol called Bullet Journaling. And again, there's a YouTube clip there that comes from the bullet journaling website, and it gives you 4 minutes just on how that might work. And certainly that's a tool that we as an organization in Full Circle have been working with many of our clients, and with really, really good results. A second option is to look at maybe an approach or a methodology called GTD, Getting Things Done. And again, the author of that concept is a guy called David Allen, and there's a link to his website. Or maybe if you're more less pen and paper and more towards using an app, then Trello or Asana or Backpack or Teamwork. There are a number of these that will help to manage large projects, but very often have really good variants that allow you to manage your time much better as well. And Trello is the one that's possibly one that's more popular at the moment. So again, you don't need a lot of equipment, you don't need a lot of tech, you don't need a lot of kit. And in many cases, and for many people, pen and paper is more than adequate, and it allows you then that opportunity to be very creative. And again, we see a number of layouts there through the bullet journaling approach, where everyone comes at it in a very different way. But the key is that you have a system or a process or a method that doesn't leak, that doesn't let things get dropped, that you can manage multiple projects, you can keep many plates spinning. And again, there's really effective planning, effective prioritization, but also things don't get missed or things don't drop off the edge. Just in terms of that, practice some ideas in there, just again, as we move towards the end of the session. Get started and be intentional. Try it. If it's not working, if your system's not working well at the minute, try something different. The value of reflection at the end of a day or at the end of a week. What went well? Let's do more of that. What didn't go so well? Maybe we need to do something different for the next day. Think about practice. Think about setting goals. Think about trying it on for size. Maybe first take a few small steps. So let's try it for a week and see how it goes. Let's try it for a month and see how it goes, and then refine and make better and improve. Think about maybe going at it for the longer term. Think about endurance. Think about resilience. Think about really toughing out, and also be comfortable with imperfection. I've been using bullet journaling for 3.5 years, and it really took me 6 to 9 months to get to a system or a process that I was really happy with. And there are still glitches and there's still a few hiccups and I still hit some bumps in the road, but by and large, it's much better than it was. But I've got a system that very rarely leaks, and I have a system that allows me to plan and prioritize and hopefully make the most effective use of my time. So just some general pointers, some things to think about. The Pareto rule, the 80-20 rule, that 80% of your productivity is going to come from 20% of your tasks or activities. So this really, really reinforces that idea of prioritization and how important it is. Don't procrastinate. Make decisions, move things on. Again, it's often said the best thing to do is to make the right decision. The second best thing is the wrong decision. The third and the worst thing to do is to make no decision. So again, don't be a slave to procrastination. Make decisions and move things on. The old sporting analogy again works very well. Touch things only once, and maybe particularly applicable to emails. Read it once and decide whether you're going to dump it, whether you're going to pass it on, whether you're going to hold it for later, or whether you're going to take action right now. Think about meetings, and again, meetings can be incredibly productive or they can be incredibly unproductive and very ineffective. Every meeting should have an agenda, should have a set of objectives, and should result in some action that is followed up on. Have a consistent ritual, so have a pattern, particularly in the morning. And again, very often, if we're going to have a good day, we start well, we start strongly in terms of where we make the best use of our time for our first 15 minutes or half an hour whenever we sit down at our desk. Have a regular pattern, have a regular rhythm, and make sure that we get off to a strong start at the beginning of the day. We all know when we do our best work. We all know when we can only do maybe more mundane or more routine tasks, and we need to focus very strongly on our energy levels, and that's everything from our exercise and our nutrition, but also again on the types of work that we can do best at different times of the day. And also we need to recognize that we all have that life outside of work, and very often that balance between life and work and making time for both is where we're at our most effective, certainly inside the workspace. So just around being more organized, exactly as we did with the prioritization and proactivity, and is exactly as we've just done again with the idea of being more focused. Also being more organized, what actions do I need to take? Do I need to use a pen and paper method? Do I need an app? Do I need something that allows me to have better control of my systems? And just in terms of bringing that all together, we talked already about the 100 days or the quarter or 3 months and how important that is. And I would advocate that if you've been provoked, if you've been stimulated to think differently, then it's to build your plan for the next 100 days. And maybe never more important than the set of conditions that we now have that are impacting all of us so heavily on how we work and on how we interact and on how we communicate and in terms of how we do business. Maybe the creation of a plan for the next 100 days is really important, and building in those concepts of proactivity, those concepts of being better focused, and all of those great ideas around how we might be better organized. Now's the time to construct that plan and to start to work through that plan and to take the actions that are necessary, and maybe to develop a list of actions you need to support you as you work through that plan so that you can get to where you need to be at the end of the next. So finally, just a checklist as we conclude the podcast, just to think about wrapping up all the things we've thought about over the last 40 minutes. Recognize that you are in a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. Recognize that your own well-being is absolutely central to all of what we've talked about. To think about implementing actions, not just about planning, but implementing actions to be more proactive, to be more focused, and to be much better organized. Think about your start, stop, continue routine. Think about if you want to start to do some neat new stuff in terms of being more proactive, focused, and organized, there may be some things that you need to stop to create the space to do that. And finally, go out there, create and implement your 100-day plan and get enjoyment and get energy and get fulfillment and get a sense of achievement through doing all of that. Just want to say thanks very much for joining me on this particular podcast. I hope it's been really useful, and I hope not just that you've enjoyed the 40 minutes, the 45 minutes that we spent together, but also that you have something you can take away, something you can work on, and that over the longer term, something you can really apply. My contact details are on the screen, and please feel free to come back to me, to email me or phone me if you require anything further or you think that I'd be able to help in any other way. Thank you.